Hey YouTube, Dawson Rider here. Welcome to my review of the Power Rangers Dino Fury 5 Zord set. So they are finally here. After 10,000 years, they're free. The deluxe Zords. So, as you could tell from this review, and as I just mentioned, this is the 5 set that includes all 5 of them. That's an Amazon exclusive, similar to the Ultra Zord one last year. So if you want to get all 5 in one go, that is available on Amazon. However, if not, they are sold separately as 3 pieces, where you can just buy the T-Rex by itself, along with Green's underwear. And then you can buy green and pink together and black and blue together, and they kind of advertise this weird faux Megazord mode to get you to do it, but it's kind of the clever way to get you to buy all of them. But those are the ways to get them. Like, as of right now, it's available on Amazon, and as of right now, they're not. The regular ones aren't in stores yet, but they're coming soon, I think. Of course, they also all include their keys, which are also going to be their helmets. We're going to do a quick cutaway right now to show those, how they compare to their Japanese versions and the morpher sounds, and then you can skip ahead past that if you want. Okay, so just looking at the key on its own, it's kind of like an enhanced version of the ones that come with the figures. It's got a really nice head sculpt to it with decent paint, and it looks really good on the Megazord itself. These actually do work in the morpher, which we'll show off in just a second. And then on the back here, you can see, it looks actually, honestly, kind of creepy. It looks like a weird headless pumpkin carrying it. But you can pull these off on all of them, and they reveal like what the normal knight looks like. And then in here, you have this little sculpt of the Ranger. Looks like a weird alien gestation pod, gestation pot, you know what I mean? So it's just kind of weird. Like, it's kind of neat that they wanted to give these individual sculpts, but it's also kind of strange to me. But for comparison, here it is next to the one that comes with the figure, you know, the front here, and then the back here. This kind of has more close to what the Resolder keys are kind of like, whereas this is like a sticker. You know, I've mentioned in past reviews how I think that it would have been a good idea to have a higher class one come with the Zords, and then this one does make a lot of sense. I know people hate these keys, but these do make more sense for the figures because of budget reasons. And then here is the Resolder Key, and you know, this is obviously still very different. These work with the mecha. You know, this is one of those ones where this is a little bit more seamless for the mecha and the changers and stuff, but you have much more of a flat face here. But the details, I would say, are actually fairly comparable. This one has kind of a shinier finished paint job, but I think that this one actually looks a little bit more accurate because of the roundedness and whatnot. But obviously, you get more full-fledged gimmick stuff. I won't talk as much in the other ones, I promise, because they have all the same points, but you can see that there. And then these obviously have this gimmick here. I think it would have been nice if they could have somehow done this so that you get the bang for your buck and you get a key that's more like from the show. But I get why they didn't, and I do appreciate that they wanted to make this more about the Zord looking good. But let's go ahead and take a look at the sounds for this. Oh, that's my car. Alright, moving on to blue, we can see the head sculpt right here. Pull off his little pod piece thing, there's the knight design, and here's the little guy on the inside. Here he is compared to his figure version right here. You can see the obvious differences going on here. And then of course, compared to the Ryu Soldier counterpart. Again, the same points about the rounded head, and of course, this one can do the standard gimmick. Alright, now we have Pink here, which I think looks very good. Let's pull off her little bald cap here. So there's that, and then little design on the inside. Compared to her figure version, which is a vast improvement compared to this one. This is probably one of the worst looking ones in terms of the helmet sculpt. Compared to the Ryu Soldier counterpart, I actually really like the way this one looks better. I'm drawing a blank on which one's more accurate for the look in the show, but I like the black visor on this one a lot more. Right, now we have Green here, also looking pretty good. Pull off his little bald cap. There's his design there, which is very nicely sculpted. And then you have our little alien design in here. And then this one only has a Ryu Soldier one to compare to right now because as of this recording, Green's figure has yet to have been released. The 5-pack should be coming out soon, so if you want to see a comparison between this version and the figure version, stay tuned for that review. last but not least, Not Chase, aka Javi here, with his design. And then the little back piece here. There's a little innards design. Do his Ryu Soldier counterpart. And real quick here before I do this last one, I just want to note that you don't necessarily have to take off the caps with some of them. I've noticed that some of them, when you flip this around, the cap will pop off. Some of them, they won't. I just wanted to make note of that. That sounds like you just lost a contest, and that's what I feel like when I use this morpher, to be honest. So let's get back to the meat of the review. Alright, now that that's out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at each of these guys individually, and then we'll be taking a look at all of the main mecha forms, as well as the sort of original US modes they have on the boxes for these sets here. And then, I'm going to mention this again at the end, but there is also a bunch of other possible modes that were shown off in the Ryu Soldier instructions back in the day. I will link to the original Japanese video, or a review of the Japanese toy, several times in this video, and you can go check that out to see all those different formations because the skills are transferable. Let's go ahead and start comparing. Okay, so we're going to start with Pinks, aka the Ankylosaurus according to them, but it's the Ankylosaurus. I'm starting with this one because I'm going to do red last since he has multiple modes we're going to get into. But here we have this. These are kind of hard to mess up because they're really basic in the show. They're two primary colors, and that's pretty much about it. And honestly, before we even compare it to the Japanese version, I actually think like the sculpting and molding details are really nice on it, and it looks pretty solid overall. And one thing this has that the Japanese one doesn't is it has a nice little ball joint on the head. In fact, they all have that, which is really nice. Like, you can't do a whole lot with it, but you can give it a little bit of personality, and it's appreciated small little detail. Here we have it compared to its Japanese counterpart. You can see the differences here. Obviously, it's pretty much what you'd expect. It's a little bit smaller. I wish it was a baller. No, okay, that was weird. But it's a little bit smaller. You're missing some details like here, which, kind of sucks, but I wouldn't consider this a crucial detail. This is something Lightning Collection fans would absolutely have a meltdown over, but that's to be expected for the individual Zords. There's always one little stripe detail that I don't find to be a big deal personally. The general quality of the silver plastic here looks a little bit shinier and better. These are both gray plastic. This is just a lighter gray one. This is a darker gray one. This is kind of the cheaper part, and this one looks a little bit better on here. And then the head sculpts, I would say, are fairly comparable. This one, again, doesn't have that action there, but pretty much all the function of these are the same, and that's pretty much the same for all of these, is that the function in terms of how they snap together and whatnot is nearly identical. Okay, so here we have Blue, who I also think looks very solid for what it is. Again, these guys are pretty basic. There's not a whole lot to mess up on for them. I think that they did a really good job here on the head sculpt. I think it looks really badass and menacing. And again, you can move the head, which just gives it a little bit of personality. So if you're displaying it by that, it's like a nice little welcome change. And I talk about that all the time with mecha reviews, how just being able to do that makes all the difference in regards to giving personality to it. And I didn't expect them to do that just for the little individual Zord modes, and it's much appreciated. Alright, now compared to its Japanese counterpart here, obviously, again, sort of par for the course differences here. You can see here the difference in the slightly, like, shinier silver look to the main head and everything. This kind of has that cheaper, dark look. But I actually think this one looks a little bit more badass, and you kind of got that etched detail in there, which is really nice. And I just really appreciate that. And this one actually feels like a little bit more solid of a sword plastic. I'm not sure if that's just me or not. The only real detail I'm seeing missing is this little cap here. Oddly enough, it's funny because of the Dino Fury figure having the problem with like the bald cap thing. I think that's kind of funny, but you can see the differences there. The par for the course differences that you've come to expect when you compare the US version to the Japanese version here. And then like the color of the blue is a little bit different. This one's a little bit brighter, this one's a little bit darker, but nothing too inaccurate or anything like that. Right, and now we have Tiger Lance here, which is honestly pretty good looking. I think he's one of the coolest looking Zords, and I think his US version actually in some ways looks a little bit cooler than the Japanese version, although there's definitely some drawbacks, which I'll get to in a second. But again, he can move his head, which I think for him adds even more personality than some of the other ones, because the other ones are just kind of like these flat little slugs, but he kind of can have that curious cat face, or he can look kind of awesome. Again, that's a nice little touch, a nice little detail, and I think overall sculpt-wise it looks pretty accurate and just awesome. Again, I'm really happy with the way this guy looks. It's probably one of my favorites individual-wise, and you can do stuff like this here. You can put this in the mouth. That's what a lot of Zords are like that. But you have these little holes here, so you can do that, and now he's curious why he's holding that. But you can do stuff like that. You can do that with all of them. I think that kind of goes without saying, though, with all of these, is given the sort of Lego dynamic, there's lots of creativity and creative liberties you can take with this. That being said, here we have next to him his Ryu Soldier counterpart right here. And so you can see, again, differences, size, you have a little bit of that shinier, better looking plastic. I think that the heads look a little bit different. This one just kind of looks more like, I don't know, this one almost looks kind of stylized and a little bit more badass. This one looks a little bit more just like generic. Like, it's not like this one's bad, it's just like, yeah, that's fine. And you know, there's little bits and details that are slightly different. The color's slightly different again. This one's a little bit lighter and stuff like that. But the main thing I wanted to note with this, which crops up a couple times in some of the other ones, is that right here you can see our standard ports here. You know, you can snap this off and put it right back up here. They're standard Zord Link or Ryu Soldier Lego ports, whatever you want to call them. However, the ones on here are not. They're just weird little rounded pegs that give you false hope. And you go to put that on there and it doesn't work. So that's strange. There's a couple like that here. There's definitely some on red. I'm not sure what the reasoning behind that is, especially when you're kind of having this gimmick here that's meant to be like, look, this is so creative and fun, you can make your own fun. And then, but except for these ones. And that's especially weird because I remember in the Ryu Soldier review, I showed off some of the other modes that they had the instructions on. Like you can take these legs off, or the legs. Look at these legs, guys. Take the tail off and you can have it as wings, or you can like take these and put them on the top and stuff like that. And I mean, I can't really do that with this because of that. So that's definitely a difference there. That's why I said previously that they're 99% the same transformation, because there is some differences going on. All right, now we have the Stego Zord here. Again, I think this looks very solid. You even have a little bit of a shiny or nice looking plastic there, which I'm going to be honest, as much as I appreciate that, it actually bothers me that it, like, is a kind of a discrepancy. Like, I hate when they do that, because it's like, oh, hey, look, we have a higher quality plastic here. They do that in other toys too, but then it breaks up the continuity of it, and I would rather it just have all of that gray plastic. I'm sure that's something that kids don't care about, but it just kind of bothers me. But other than that, again, I think aesthetically, all these Zords look very solid for what they are, and I'm pretty happy with this. And I like the molding details on this, especially right here. You kind of have this molded detail that gives it this little bit of an ancient look, which I think is really cool. And here he is next to his Ryu Soldier counterpart. It somehow feels like these are the most comparable in size. I mean, they're all have a size difference compared to their Japanese counterparts, but these two feel the most comparable. And you can see the differences there in terms of like the plastic there. And again, he has that cohesiveness. You don't have an articulated head on this one just because I guess it would be kind of weird. I guess you could turn it side to side if you wanted, but I see why this one doesn't have it. I'm not going to fly off the handle about it and stuff like that. But for the most part, again, fairly comparable. I would say that the head looks like it has a little bit more personality on here, and you kind of have a bit more of that rustical design. It's the same here. It kind of makes it look more ancient, which is really cool. But other than that, pretty par for the course stuff for these guys. All right, now we got our main event here, the T-Rex Champion Zord, which honestly, again, looks pretty much like you would expect. I think it overall looks pretty solid. It's pretty comparable to the Japanese one. It almost looks just like a shrunken version of it. I feel this one looks a little bit more jumbled than the others because of how much is going on, but I think it's a very solid look and a very solid Zord overall. Unfortunately, you can't move his head, but that also makes a lot of sense because it works off of the Lego peg system, because you're going to need it to transfer it to the chest for the Megazord and also other formations, so it would have been kind of difficult to work your way around that, which is, you know, just makes sense. Something worth noting though, which I'll bring up again when I do the comparison though, is that these little arms here are actually movable. Like, not only can you move them here for a little bit of personality, but you can move them out of the way more when you're doing the transformation, which is really nice and something you could not do with the Japanese version. They were fixed. Now, speaking of those ports you can't use, you have one of those right here, which is really weird. Unless I was doing it wrong on the Japanese version, they're supposed to be right next to each other, which I'll show you in a second, like these two cannons, I mean. Even if I am doing it wrong, there is 3 possible ports here on the Japanese version, so again, you have one of these weird unusable ports. I wonder if that was some sort of budget thing, like, oh, we saved 0.3 cents. Again, it just seems weird. Also, this Megazord does have articulation, like a lot more articulation than your standard Sentai Zord period, much less the Ryu Soldier one, which we'll show more when we get into the Megazord modes, but it's worth noting you can use it a little bit here. Unfortunately, the legs are going the opposite way, but if you wanted to do some stuff with it, you can sort of do a little bit there, and I wanted to note that. But now let's compare it to its Japanese counterpart. So here we have him next to his Japanese counterpart here. Again, this one I think is one of the more notable ones. I think it always happens with the bigger one, like the big centerpiece one, where this one definitely looks better. You have the higher quality there, but like the head sculpt is a little bit better on this one too. This one does just look like a shrunken version, but in terms of comparing their heads, I think this is the only one where I really feel the Japanese one does look a little bit better. And something I haven't mentioned to this point is the general quality, like the feel of them. and almost always the Japanese ones are going to feel a higher quality. This isn't a snobbery thing. It's just like, that's just how it feels. It's a higher quality plastic. That's one of the reasons that I got Sentai Mecha, not because I hated Power Ranger stuff, but because there is a certain nice feel this have that this doesn't have. But that being said, these feel very solid, and I'll be bringing that up a couple times up in the review, but these feel very solid. They do feel like a cheaper plastic, but they don't feel like a cheap plastic that's going to break, and in my opinion, they are notably more sturdy than the Beast Morpher Zords, so I wanted to bring that up. Now again, here with these on the Japanese version, they're fixed, you can't move them, nice little improvement there, but here you can see on top the cannons are different, and you have all 3 ports are Lego ports, which is just kind of strange. Now, before we get to the other modes though, I do have another friend I want to bring in for comparison. And this right here is the Battle Attackers version. This is the Deluxe Power Rangers version. This is the Battle Attackers version. I did a review on this. I was actually very impressed with this. I will link to it if you want to see more on it. But I wanted to bring it up because if you're really wanting a display for just the T-Rex Zord by itself, this is a very solid option. Actually, I think the best looking of the 3 just for a T-Rex by itself. So now we are going to do what we've been waiting for, and we're going to transform into warrior mode. Just of note, I know there is a tank mode with this, which I did not forget, but that will be in the bonus segment at the end. I want to do all the main Megazord figures first, but then we will do bonus. Transforming, we're going to take this off, and we're going to separate this from it, which it's not doing right now, but just trust me, you're going to separate the cannon from this. And take this little cannon off as well. And then you're just going to take the legs and you just click them here. It's worth noting in the Japanese version there was a little press button to release those. These are just a standard clicking gimmick. And then just twist this all the way around. Then stand them up and you're done. I'm just kidding. Once you have them standing up, pull these down so you have the arms. And then don't pop that off. Pop, pop. Get it? Because it's like Community and Amelia's grandfather. So I saved it, guys. There we go. Now take these cannons, reattach them here. And then the tail's going to go on the back, and again, you can move these out of the way, something you couldn't do with the Japanese version, although, to be fair, they weren't in the way in the Japanese version, but I still like it. And last but certainly not least, put the key right here, and it is a very tight fit, and so you don't have to worry about that falling out. But there you have it. There you have the T-Rex Champion Zord Warrior Formation, which I think looks really awesome. It does have some awesome articulation, which we'll get into in a second, but let's just kind of go over the look of it. I think it looks really good. Again, it is missing some details in some places and looks a little bit muted compared to how shiny the Japanese one looks. But I think it looks really nice, and it looks really accurate, and it looks a lot more like the suit in the show, in my opinion. And something I didn't go over when I was going over the keys is the keys do have articulation on the head, which again adds a lot of personality, but you also have articulation on the arms. You can move them in and out here. You can bend the elbows right here. You can see the legs here. They'll move out like this, and they extend. So you get an even longer robot, and you can bend the legs here, so you can actually get some articulated poses. This isn't going to stay up. You have to have Dawson's finger here to do this one. That sounded wrong, but you know what I mean. But this is really freaking awesome, because if you watch the show, you know that they do lots of dynamic fights with these mecha. In fact, that's one of the coolest things about the Ryu Soldier footage in Dino Fury is I really love the dynamic fights in this series, and they get really acrobatic, and that happens a lot with Sentai Mecha. It's pretty much a known fact. If you've collected any Power Rangers or Sentai Mecha over the years, that you're going to have to deal with them being a brick compared to what it's like in the show. But I love the fact that they went all out with the articulation on these, and it feels very solid. And the way it works is nice, because these click back into place, so you can keep it upright like your standard mecha, and then you kind of pop them out to activate the articulation. It feels like I'm doing stretches. And 1, and 2, and 3, work that articulation. That was weird. But you know what I mean. I think they did a really good job with that. Same thing with this, is that these will kind of click into place, so when you're doing other transformations, it makes it easier. It's not perfect, but I think that's a lot of the reason, obviously, we do have to deal with not having articulation in other Sentai Mecha. More than willing to work around it a little bit in order to actually have articulation, which is just something great about it, which I really like. Something else of note is, like, this comes with this little crotch piece here for, like, the Five Nights and stuff. I'm not sure why they wanted to include that. I know it's a bit of a different system, like it doesn't have that traditional peg system, you know, like I showed you on the other side of this, so you can't use the standard pieces, so I know why this piece exists, but it just seems weird. Like, when you look at the promo photos, like, oh, here is the T-Rex Champion Zord with Green's butt flap. Like, I don't know, it's weird. And now, real quickly, before we get to the comparison to the Japanese version, something I did want to discuss was just the feel of this. Again, I talked about the quality, and I think this feels a lot more solid than the Beast Morpher Zords, and the same goes for the plugs here for the Lego pieces. With that being said, though, the plugs do not feel as easy and satisfying as the Ryu Soldier versions. Like when you're messing with the Ryu Soldier version, it's just click, click, click. It's super easy to do. These are a little bit more difficult. You will get that snap, but sometimes you're sitting here going, ugh, and it just doesn't feel right or as satisfying or as fluid. But on the positive side, it is a tight fit, like a toiga, so you're not going to have to worry about as much loose problems. But I wanted to note that. It doesn't feel as fast and easy as the Ryu Soldier clicking, but it is secure. But now here we have him next to his Japanese counterpart. You can see the difference there, and honestly, you know, you have some aesthetically pleasing things on this as well, and I certainly still like my Ryu Soldier mecha, but I really do prefer this one in terms of its accuracy compared to the show. It looks a lot more like the suit. Love that I can actually put it in poses. I think that's really awesome. I think that is one area that they succeeded in aesthetically with the Beast Morpher Zords as well, was that they did look a little bit more like the show suit, which was awesome compared to the sort of brickish look of the Japanese ones. You know, you're always going to have your purists out there, but I think this one brings far more positives than your average US release, which I think is great. But now let's go ahead and do the official Megazord. Okay, this is very simple. All you're going to do to start off is just take the cannons off and take the drills off. Then take blue, separate it in half, pink, separate it in half. Take pink's head half and attach it to the cannon like this. Again, see, not as easy or satisfying as the Ryu Soldier one. Same thing with blue's head half. Attach the cannon right here. Then you're going to attach those here and here. Now take the drill, attach it to this, snap them up here. And that's pretty much it. That is your Dino Fury Megazord. Not a whole lot of difference. He's just wearing different arms. There's no different helmet for this. You do have the different individual helmets, obviously, for the others, but this is kind of underwhelming. So a lot of my points stand, though, and I just think this looks a lot better when it has that more accurate look overall. Articulation and whatnot, and you can do stuff like this, which is just awesome. And I'm going to put this down just because it's a little bit easier to kind of get a general look at him. Just to compare it again, you're basically seeing the same comparison. It's like a comparison 0.5 to the Japanese version. But all of my thoughts on how these look comparatively stand, it's just, you know, it's pretty underwhelming for the main Megazord mode. But you can see the difference there. Again, especially with this mode, for whatever reason, I prefer it with the articulated look. I think it just looks a little bit more dynamic and a little bit better. But now let's go ahead and we will take a look at all the alternate modes, because you do have alternate head modes for each one of them, sort of similar to Zeo. We have pink and blue, and then of course we have black and green, and then the grand finale of that will be 5 Nights. Okay, so to get started for this, basically just take off all these little pieces in the T-Rex head and create a naked version. Also, I just wanted to show off before I forget, because we're gonna have to take this piece out anyway, that you can use the versions that come with the figures here. And oh, that just went down there. It is a bit of a tight fit. It doesn't look as good, but it is possible, which is a nice bit of functionality. And as I just mentioned, regardless of whether you're using these or the ones they come with, it is a tight fit, which is kind of nice for, you know, quality purposes, but also can be a little bit annoying just in terms of trying to switch them out. But I wanted to show that out first. Okay, so now this formation for blue. Separate pink, this piece at the top, these at the top, separate blue, chest piece, arm piece 1, arm piece 2, and it goes over the bridge these create. Then you do this again, arm piece 3, blue's helmet, there you go, and there you have the blue formation for it. And honestly, it looks pretty decent. You know, these are kind of weird because they're kind of like this weird hodgepodge of things, and you have like pink going on there, so it's not just blue, but you have kind of blue in the focus. And I don't know why, I mean, this piece right here wouldn't have worked out as the chest piece, but it always just seemed weird to me that the bottom half was like the main centerpiece. I just thought that was kind of strange. Real quick here, just comparison to its Japanese counterpart. You're going to kind of see all the same sort of differences going on in terms of what they look like and the proportions and whatnot. The only thing I really have to say about that is that something about the head sculpt on the US one looks a little bit weird in this mode. Like, it looks a little bit elongated. I'm not sure if that's how it was in the show. I don't quite remember, but just this looks a little bit strange to me. But that's just me. But kind of you kind of have the same differences there as before. But now let's go ahead and do Pink's formation. For Pink, we're going to swap a few things out. Take this out. And then put the head in there. So there you have that. And that's a pretty neat one. I think this one looks pretty cool in this mode. I always thought it would have been cooler or made more sense for this like hammer weapon to use both of the spikes instead of the spike and a cannon on the end, and maybe put one of the cannons here just in terms of a design perspective. But this is what it looks like. You know, this looks a little bit big on the side here, but also creates kind of a cool sort of like side-swiping blade weapon, which is neat. And to compare it to the Japanese version, this is something you kind of already saw when I did the keys, but this actually does have a more accurate helmet sculpt. I went and looked at the picture online in between shooting these little segments, and this is much more accurate, so this actually looks a lot better. Again, in general, it's kind of impressive to me how much better a lot of these look in terms of just show accuracy, at least for me. I mean, this still feels quality, and you have the ease of switching between the LEGO gimmicks, but these just really have an edge when it comes to looks for me in a lot of ways. Okay, just starting from scratch here for green. For this one, you're actually going to need blue's piece with the drill on top, just like 3 Knights sort of. Same thing with pinks. Of note, on the instructions, or on the box rather, for this, it shows you having pink on both sides, meaning it has you doing this. I'm going to presume that's because pink and green come together, so they want to show you a version of this you can do if you only buy red, pink, and green and you don't have black and blue, but I believe this is the normal, quote-unquote, official version from Ryu Soldier that's seen in the show. Now just take our tiger here, take these pieces off right here, open it up. Chest piece, and these pieces go on the side. Now separate his body like this. This piece goes here. Separate the head. Make sure you get it. It can be kind of difficult because the ball joint head will come off. This one here. Then take his tail piece and attach the head on. There you have the Headless Horseman, just in time for Halloween. I'm just kidding. Alright, there we go with Green's formation. That one looks pretty cool. I always thought it was just kind of strange looking that he's just got half of like decapitated tiger legs on the side of him for the design. Again, this is kind of speaking about the design choices in general and not necessarily specifically this toy, but it also looks pretty cool. You know, it's a pretty cool formation. Like I said, you have that weird thing where it wants you to do both sides of pink, but it is nice that they show that you can do that if for whatever reason you're like, I really don't want the black and blue Zords, so you can do a version of this that has Ankylo pink on the other side there. But still, pretty cool looking, and I think the head sculpt looks really awesome and really badass there. Well, let's do our comparison, and again, I think it wins out in terms of head sculpt here. I think it really looks superior. It looks a little bit more defined. All the other ones honestly kind of bleed together on the Ryu Soldier one compared to these ones. Okay, so for Black Rangers, you can actually leave blue and pink on there. Again, similarly, the back of the box shows you using both pieces for blue because of the set coming with blue and black, but this is kind of the more normal way to do it. Then you just take Mill Needle and you're just going to basically completely disassemble him into almost all the different parts you can get him in. Now let's assemble. Alright, and there you have Black's formation. Now it's worth noting that the instructions show you doing something different with these, but again, this is how I remember it being from Ryu Soldier, both from the toy and the show. But I see why they do it in terms of this design, because the way these are right now prevents you really from using the arms, and if you try to bend these up, it'll pop them off. But I'll show the comparison real quick to the Japanese version, and then I'll show you what they want you to do. That is a little bit disappointing because I think this mode looks cooler, and I always kind of liked them covering this aspect with the shields, and I always thought that looked really neat. But setting that aside, this still looks pretty cool. You can see here the differences, like I can actually move the arms up and stuff like that, and you can see that this kind of covers it and it doesn't hinder in the way of the movement of the arms, partly because it's not articulated, but that's kind of the way it's supposed to be, and you don't really have any issue doing this and this at the same time, whereas this you do. So that is also a difference of these, and one of the only sort of functional differences that I've found outside of the ports like these being different. Have you just putting them on like this, kind of sideways, so that they don't get in your way, and it still looks fine and it gives you a lot more function, but I think it looks better the other way just look-wise, but now at least you can move the arms up. So, alright, now we'll take a look at Five Nights, which is the main event. Okay, so for simplicity's sake, I just took us back to a kind of naked T-Rex champion so we can have that ready there. So take blue here and attach the cannon right on top facing forward though, that's important. Same thing with pink on the head portion, take the cannon and place it top there. We're going to place them both on top. Now take this off, piece here from Stego, and you're going to attach this, attach this, and attach this. I'm going to go into his hand, and I'll do that in just a second. Now take this tail piece and just attach the two drills. And that's actually going to be the chest piece. I always thought this was kind of a weird chest piece. Like, I get it's a cannon, but I don't know. I just always thought it was kind of an underwhelmingly weird chest piece for this, like, big 5 formation. Now take this piece for green, snap it on here, put back together the tiger sword. There you have the sword. And then you remember this crotch piece here, which is included with the T-Rex and not the tiger because you don't have the proper peg system there, so they have to use this different one. Again, I'm not sure why that is. So up top here, just separate the tail, snap it right on. And then we're just going to take this piece and put it right here. There's a little holder for it. There you go. And there we have the 5 Knights formation. And I'm going to be honest, I've never been too huge on this form. It's a little bit messy. You know, it's really cool the way you have all these different helmets for the individual ones. And then you get to this one and it just has the same helmet that you use for the standard T-Rex and standard Megazord modes. I always wish that there was a special key for this mode since it's kind of the all-combined one. And, you know, it looks fine. I'll say again with this one, I think it looks a little bit better than the Japanese one because you have a little bit more of that sleekness to it. And the posability is a little bit more restricted because of how heavy it is, but I think it makes it look a little bit more palatable. But with this version, this is kind of strange. I feel like this gets lost in the back a little bit, and I feel that this piece is kind of protruding over his face, which can be kind of annoying, which you'll see when I bring in the Japanese version. Plus, my same complaint from just the design of this from the Ryu Soldier one is that you're left with a lot of random leftover pieces. I mean, fortunately, this is a customizable sort of mix and match, have your own fun Lego thing, so you can probably make some mutant formations, especially when we get other Megazords, but it still kind of sucks to have leftover pieces with a line where the whole thing is about all this customization and you could theoretically attach everything at the same time, and yet they never had an official mode where you could do that. Like, it's great that it leaves it up to the imagination of the consumer, but I was always baffled that you have this Lego fully customizable one where you could conceivably combine everything, and they didn't go for it. But let's compare it to the Japanese version. So there you have that. I think, again, I like the sleekness of the US version a little bit more, but one thing this has going for it is I feel that this part doesn't get lost as much, and then the spikes don't block his face off, which is nice. But this one definitely looks a little bit wispier. It's funny because I feel like the perfect look for this is somewhere between the two. This one looks so clunky and blocky and messy. This one being a little bit more spread out gives it a little bit more room to breathe. But then you have this piece here which kind of gets in the way. But you can kind of move the head out of the way, I suppose. Maybe even turn it this way or something like that. It just depends on the way you're looking at it. But, you know, I've never been a personal fan of this mode in general. But now let's go ahead and we will do some of the bonus modes. Okay, so for this mode, you basically just want to have the T-Rex mode and then take off the two little drills. And you're going to place them on the sides of blue and pink. You're effectively just going to kind of fold him up crouched like this, and you're going to want to make sure that his legs are locked, you know, when they extend for the articulation. You're going to make sure the legs are locked so they can sort of more properly lie down, and just kind of basically fold him up and get him so he goes down right like this. Then you just attach these to the side right here. Alright, and then you basically have that. Looks a little different than the Japanese version. This has never been my favorite mode, you know, it's fine. There also is like an extended version. I don't remember if they ever used it in the show that use all of them, and I'll link here and maybe show it on screen that they did with the Ryu Soldier version. And like I said, there's a bunch more combinations in that video that they showed off in the instructions for that. But now let me go ahead and I'm going to show off the two exclusive modes they have on the packaging. Okay, so for black and blue here, you're effectively just going to completely disassemble black. That's almost all you do with any of his transformations is disassemble them. And then just separate blue as well. And then you also do have these extra pieces here, which are these kind of extra hand feet things. Oh, I didn't have. There's only meant to be 2 of them. There's 2 of them for each of these, for green and pink and blue and black. But you have these extra pieces, and then these extra blue colored cannons, and there's also pink colored drills, which I'll show in a second. And they're meant to be used for these, but if you wanted to, you can use them in other formations like blue and pink's unique Megazord modes, which can kind of give it some unique flair. You take these two and you put them together like this, and you might notice that they're not actually going to stick together, but that's because they want you to sort of glue these together by using this piece here, then flip it this way, stick the head on top of here, then take this piece, snap it on here. Now take Tricera's head, place this here, the bottom spiky bit here, and then take these 2 pieces and place them here on the top version because it kind of makes like tank wheels. Then you put these 2 together and store them on the back. Lastly here, just put the 2 cannons on the side, And there you have that. It's unique cannon formation. I think of the two, I like this one the most. Like, green and pinks is okay, but it looks like kind of a weird mutant creation. But I really dig this one. It looks kind of like a badass tank. I think it's creative. I don't know if they'll ever use it in the show if they decide to do original creations. I think it's just to sell the toy to make it seem like it's meant to be its own thing. But yeah, it's pretty neat. Now with green here, unfortunately, I'm going to be able to only show you everything but the legs because this was one of the last things I was filming and one of my legs broke off here. So I can't show you, but you are supposed to take one of those slipper feet pieces and attach them to the bottom. I'll show like an image from the box how it's supposed to work. So that's unfortunate, especially since I'm talking about how sturdy it feels. But unfortunately that happened. It seemed more like my error, but I can't show that part. But I can show the waist up. So obviously, you just take him, take his head off, take all the other stuff off, and you kind of basically sit him upright. Then take pink, separate it, this up top here, attach his head up here, and take these two, place them on the sides. Then take the unique pink drills, place them on here. And it's weird because the instructions show you putting this on this side, but the box shows it on this side, so I'm just going to put it on that side, but just know you can put that on either side. And then you can give him the sword. Again, I think the instructions and the box show two different things, but you can just kind of give it to wherever. You can put it in the front paw, but you can also put it here to give him a sword. And you kind of have this weird Tiger Megazord mutant formation. Again, I respect the creativity, and it's not that different than the ones that they showed you with Ryu Soldier's ones. They had like a bunch of non-show mode ones that you could give you ideas for, but then you can also go off of your own. And I kind of like the way it looks on the box. Like the art on the box for this individual one actually looks pretty cool, but the actual thing is kind of a mutant. And it's kind of unfortunate that my legs broke, but I kind of wanted to show off at least most of a version of it. All right, guys, so final verdict time. This thing's crap, don't buy it. Just kidding, I just wanted to do the accent and roll the R's on that. But overall, I'm very happy with this. Honestly, it's not perfect. I have my nitpicks, like this kind of being in the way of his face, but you can see in this pose, it hardly makes a difference. I would say I only have two real problems with this, which you probably noticed me mentioning throughout the review, which is stuff like this, where you have the weird ports that aren't Zord Link ports. I don't know why they did that, to be honest. I'm sure there was some sort of reason, but I feel like it's just counterintuitive to the whole creative aspect of the line, and it hinders some transformations. And again, as I mentioned, just clicking together the blocks for Zord Link isn't anywhere near as smooth as the Ryu Soldier one. I noticed that especially when working on this review because, you know, I was transforming it on screen and like really trying hard to press together around the camera, and then off screen I would get together Five Nights in like 5 seconds because everything clicks together so beautifully smooth. However, a bonus of that is because they click together so tightly they won't fall apart. So they're not perfect, but I think that these are a definite step up above the Beast Morpher Zords, and I can recommend checking them out. They don't have every single detail, but they look solid. They have little quality of life improvements like the articulated heads on the Zords. The fact that the Megazords themselves are articulated and you can get more dynamic poses like these is a huge bonus, and as I mentioned, being a step up from the Beast Morpher Zords, they overall feel solid. Like this guy, I feel like I can go take him to my display right now, and I don't have to worry about like if I blink at him wrong, him falling apart. The Beast Morpher Zords were very insecure. These feel much more secure. They're very good looking, and I definitely recommend checking them out for Dino Fury fans. And I think there's even a case to be made for Dino Fury and Ryu Soldier fans to choose this over the Ryu Soldier counterpart in terms of how they look, and like because they look much more like the show suits, which is great. I think time will tell on that in regards to the other releases, and if we don't get everybody and what you want to collect. But as of right now, when it comes to these five, I think there's compelling reason to choose this over the Japanese counterpart. But that's about it for this one, though, guys. Until next time, like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you get notifications for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.